No matter how much we want to, we'll never truly understand someone else. Not entirely. But that's part of understanding, isn't it? To misunderstand, to writhe, to struggle, to fail, but still, somehow, our desire to understand, to connect, to belong, to forgive, to grieve, to accept, it's gotten us farther than we once thought. We place trust in ourselves and in each other. And in the end, despite everything, we keep trying. We play along, we get along just fine. The world hasn't ended yet. Until Then is an indie game that was released in 2024. Its genres are labeled as an adventure game or a visual novel, but to put a label like that on it is not doing it justice. I bought the game without knowing anything about it just to pick it up and try something new and hopefully try to get a good story out of it. And I never knew what was ahead of me for over the next 10 hours of the main story or Act 1. Amazing characters, artistic unique visuals, and a story that left me feeling satisfied, yet wanting more. Until Then is, in my opinion, an absolute masterpiece of a game regarding its story, its in-depth characters, and its personality. So in today's video, I want to do something new for the channel, which is do a sort of analysis, review, and discussion all in one. So I'll say now, spoilers ahead for Until Then. If you have this game or you have heard of it, I highly recommend it if you can get immersed in a good story. It's really that good. So, with that spoiler warning out of the way, let's get into the video. At the beginning of the game, we're introduced to Mark Borgia, a high school student who has a passion for playing piano and addiction to video games, which causes him to procrastinate on all his schoolwork, making him not at all relatable. Mark lives alone due to his parents working abroad, which adds layers to his character later in the story. Mark, through the game, also suffers through a kind of deja vu, a sense that he's seen certain people or experienced certain things before. This will be important later. Later, we are also introduced to Kathy, Mark's best friend who is present all throughout the game, acting as a bright optimist who talks endlessly about crushes or having fun. This serves as a contrast to Mark's usual dull attitude. Through the story, it's hinted that Kathy's life may not be as positive as she herself is and as she portrays herself. This is actually a mystery that I was very interested in as the game continued to unfold. Finally, the last character I'll introduce in depth is Nicole. Nicole is a new student that arrives in the beginning of the story that Mark runs into by accident. Literally. But he says that she seems familiar despite never meeting her. The two slowly develop a relationship through the game, with it being revealed Nicole also plays piano like Mark. In fact, she is a child prodigy, but she quit due to the disappearance of her best friend Jake. It's also important to say here that in the world of Until Then, some places have been hit by natural disasters, which is dubbed the ruling in the game. Nicole's family was a victim of an earthquake in her city, and they had to move, which is the cause of her moving to Mark's city in the present day of the story. This is something that is very important to Nicole's character, the disappearance of her friend, and the absence of what she knew to be home and moving into a new place is something that I found very compelling about her character that we'll touch on later in the video. Other characters from the game that are important to mention are Ryan, who is a friend and classmate of Mark's and there is an athlete of the school, Riddell, who is Mark's other best friend besides Kathy, and in the main story, Riddell is absent due to his success of his new film getting off the ground, which is something that is felt deeply by Mark and Kathy. And finally, Louise, who is the smart girl of the school and is generally considered the best student by everyone. She is responsible and she takes her work very seriously, and this is made very clear in the first chapter of the story. She befriends Mark early in the story and helps provide exposition on the deja vu that both her and Mark experience. When I first started the game, one aspect of Until Then that really struck me was its personality. The sound and ambiance adds to the scenes the game's introduced, and despite what can be described as its simpler visual style, the game still has beautiful scenery and sets that give the game and the story life. I also love the little details like the mini-games or right at the beginning when Mark fails to put the USB stick in the laptop. Little details like this were the things that made me fall in love with the game in its early chapters and what kept me playing it as it continued. As I progressed further, that's when it started to hit me. I was getting invested in this story. The moment I realized this game was going to be something special was at the end of chapter 1, when Kathy and Mark share a moment under an umbrella and talk about the rain. Kathy makes remarks about butterflies in the rain, stating how they are powerless against this powerful force and are at risk of being tattered. This moment struck me as it just seemed like a special moment in the story, and I loved the characterization of Mark and Kathy's friendship as one that's deeply personal, despite them not being romantic in any way. They just deeply care for each other, and I love the story for taking that route as I feel it's a route that's not explored a lot in media anymore, and it's something that I think made their characters really special and why I had so much attachment to their relationship in the story. Speaking of her, Kathy's character is one that I loved throughout the game and was consistently my favorite character. I love her place in the story as the best friend of Mark, and all the brightness that surrounds her character. In the game, it's teased that Kathy's home life may not be a very healthy one, and this is one mystery of the game I was very invested in as I played it. Kathy's story unfortunately echoes too many others in real-life situations, and the way the game handles it within the story is great and is written well within the character of Kathy. It's not all her character is, but by the end is crucial to the way she acts and why she is so positive. It is the foundation of her character in the story and why she acts the way she does. One aspect of the game that I really enjoyed was the relationship of Nicole and Mark and the build-up that went along with that. Of course, you can find yourself rooting for Mark as he is the main character, but can also find yourself seeing when he's done something wrong. During the story, in Chapter 5, Nicole takes Mark on a trip to her hometown, which was affected by the ruling, to meet her grandparents. After sharing a bike ride and an intimate talk, she invites him to follow her through a destroyed part of the town, claiming it was a shortcut to her grandparents' house. Mark then ends up at the remnants of her old home and the home of her best friend who went missing, named Jake. Mark criticizes Nicole for her recklessness bringing them here, and she responds by asking if he understands how she feels now seeing the wreckage of her old life. Mark tries to see it how Nicole does, but she begins to get angry and asks Mark how he can understand. He has friends who care, and that she has no one, no home, no one to be there for her, besides someone who doesn't even understand how she feels. This is when I get into the deep part. Until Then tackles a topic that moved me while playing the game, and that being grief and acceptance. Until Then is a story that is not afraid to tackle serious topics and show the heartbreaking emotion behind the obstacles that life can throw at us. The story is honest and doesn't tone anything down. The grief that Nicole feels towards her friend missing is something that deeply affects her to the point where she acts out of character and gets angry at Mark, pushing him down. This is something that she simply just can't let go. It's made a wound that she can't heal. Nicole's struggle is something I believe anyone can relate to. We've all lost something or felt empty at times, and it's a part of life, the challenges, and why it's so difficult. But what we've been through and what we've lost doesn't define who we are. It makes us what we will be and what we can be. It's about the growth we get after something tragic. But growth in itself is a choice, and a choice that you have to make on your own. So the question is, will Nicole make this choice? After this event, Mark goes into sort of a breakdown, which reveals what I've labeled in the game as the twist. Mark confesses to Kathy that his mom is not working abroad. In fact, she has been missing for years. It's something that up until this moment he had refused to accept, but now feels as if he has no choice. This part of the game really struck me as it dives into the deepness of the characters and presents the idea of identity and Mark's confusion behind his. Does he love piano just because of his mom? Is his passion just the hope that one day she might come back? Is he making something up to her? Mark thinks that his constant work at stress at his passion will somehow make it up to his mom. He feels like he failed her somehow. He realizes that it's hopeless to try to figure it out, which in the end is what gives him hope, and eventually turns into his acceptance. Grief becomes nothing without acceptance. Tragedy will happen, but it's about how you process and accept the events that define you. Mark makes the decisions to live for himself and stop letting his trauma hold him back from what he wants. He loves his mother, but he can't keep lying to himself about her disappearance. She's gone, and now after he accepts it, it's time to start living how he wants to. On the night of the prom, something that the game has been building up to, Mark asks Nicole to dance and tells her the truth about everything. She sympathizes with Mark, and they both admit their wrongs and share a sweet moment that would seem to solidify their future together. As Mark says, their teamwork never fails. During this moment, Mark notices the absence of someone he promised his last dance with, Kathy. Earlier in the story, there is a string of missing person cases, seemingly random with one thing in common. At the time of the disappearance, they were all alone. It is theorized by Louise to be caused by the rain. Louise proposes the idea of anomalies that cause ripples in space-time that are making people disappear, and that they are triggered by the rain. Mark races out of the school looking for Kathy as her parents are set angry at the prom, looking for her. Mark races through the wilderness looking for his friend before the rain inevitably starts. After seeing visions of his mom, Mark knows he doesn't want to lose another person close to him. Not this time. Mark finally stops, given up and exhausted. He looks across the street and sees her, his best friend. He hasn't lost her. Kathy approaches across the street slowly as Mark begins an internal dialogue. His friend had been found. The rain wouldn't take her. It was all gonna be okay after all. This part of the game honestly broke me. The death of Kathy, seemingly at random, revealed a lot. You can see burns and marks across her arms under her dress. What we later found out is a result of an overbearing, abusive family. Kathy's character has resonated with so many people since the game released. A character that was the positive force driving Mark through the story, being there for him when he needed her most, and overall, just the unsung hero of the game. In a post-game dialogue from Kathy, in a message sent to Mark, she explains her hope for the future, how she knows Riddell will make it big with his films, how Louisa will accomplish great things, and how Mark and Nicole will end up together. Kathy explains her future will be bright as well, and she'll be right there with them all. Although the harsh truth is there, this fully wraps around to the idea of acceptance. Mark's acceptance over the passing of his best friend is nothing easy, but in a reflection of his mother, he will live for her future, and for her memory. And you never know, maybe in a different life, or in a different universe, maybe she's still out there. Or maybe it's just deja vu.